Picture this. You're at work. Someone hands you a USB drive. Hey, can you check if this presentation works? You plug it in. Windows makes that familiar sound. You see the files. You click on one. Everything seems normal. But what if I told you that in that moment, between the click and the file opening, your computer just asked a question you never heard? A question buried in code. A question that for 99.999% of people means nothing. But for one person, in one facility, on one specific day, it meant war. This is the story of a USB drive that destroyed 1,000 machines. A piece of software so sophisticated that it took the world's best security researchers months to understand what they were looking at. A weapon that didn't need bullets, just a click. This is the story of Stuxnet, the world's first true cyber weapon. And it started with something you've done 100 times. Something so ordinary you never thought twice about it. But here's the twist nobody talks about. This digital missile that changed warfare forever might have actually made things worse. To understand Stuxnet, you have to go back to 2006. Deep inside the National Security Agency headquarters at Fort Meade, Maryland. The Bush administration has a problem. Iran is enriching uranium at an underground facility called Natanz. Sanctions aren't working. A military strike could trigger a regional war. They need a third option. Enter Operation Olympic Games, the most ambitious cyber operation ever conceived. A joint effort between the NSA and Israel's Unit 8200, an elite cyber warfare unit so secretive most Israelis don't even know it exists. But there's a catch. The target isn't connected to the internet. It's air-gapped, completely isolated. No network cables, no Wi-Fi, just concrete, centrifuges, and paranoid security protocols. To attack it, they'd need to do something unprecedented. They'd need to build a weapon that could think for itself. So they did something extraordinary. In the deserts of Tennessee, the U.S. Department of Energy built a perfect replica of Iran's Natanz facility. They acquired the exact same Siemens controllers, the same IR-1 centrifuges, reverse-engineered from stolen Pakistani designs. They studied every vibration, every frequency, every failure mode. They were building a digital sniper rifle, and they needed to know exactly where to aim.
The year is 2009. Somewhere in Iran, a man carries a USB drive. He's not a spy. He's probably a contractor, maybe an engineer, someone with access, someone who doesn't ask too many questions, someone who just got paid very well to plug in a drive and walk away. Intelligence agencies call this a digital mule, and in the world of cyber warfare, they're worth their weight in gold. Because no matter how sophisticated your malware is, if you can't get it inside the target network, it's useless. The USB drive looks ordinary, but hidden in its file system is a weapon called Stuxnet 0.5, the early version. It doesn't have the fancy exploits that would make it famous later. It has something simpler, an autorun.inf file. The kind of thing that's been around since Windows 95. The Mule plugs the drive into a computer on the perimeter network. Windows does what it's designed to do. It reads the autorun file, it executes the payload, and just like that, Stuxnet is inside. But here's where it gets interesting. Stuxnet doesn't attack, not yet. It sits. It watches. It spreads quietly through the network using stolen credentials hard-coded from Siemens WinCC software. It checks every computer it touches, asking the same question over and over: "Am I home yet?" It's looking for a very specific fingerprint: Siemens Step 7 software, S7315 programmable logic controllers, and a very particular configuration of frequency converter drives. At least 33 of them, made either by Vakon from Finland or Fararopaya from Iran. If it finds them, it knows. It's inside module A26, the heart of Iran's nuclear program. The kill box.
Now, let's talk about what made Stuxnet truly unprecedented. Most malware uses one, maybe two exploits. Stuxnet used 4 zero-day vulnerabilities, flaws so new, so unknown, that no antivirus software on Earth had ever seen them. Zero-day number 1, CVE 2010-2568, the LNK vulnerability. This was the one that made headlines, a flaw in how Windows handles shortcut files. Normally, when you plug in a USB drive, you see icons for your files. Those icons are just images, right? Wrong. Stuxnet weaponized the icon. It created a malicious .lnk shortcut file that told Windows, "Hey, use this executable as your icon source." Windows, trusting as always, would load and execute that file just to display the icon. No click required, no user interaction. Just plug in the drive and boom, you're infected, even if auto run was disabled. Zero-day number 2, the print spooler vulnerability, MS-10-061. Stuxnet used this to move laterally across networks. It would craft special print jobs, malicious packets disguised as printer commands, that would execute code with system-level privileges on remote machines. It was spreading like a ghost through the network. Zero-day number 3 and 4, two separate elevation of privilege exploits. These allowed Stuxnet to escalate from a normal user account to full administrator access, complete control. But wait, there's more. Stuxnet also carried 2 stolen digital certificates, real cryptographic signatures from legitimate companies, Realtek and J-Micron, both based in Taiwan. Those certificates told Windows, "Trust me, I'm legitimate software." The certificates had been stolen, but they were real. Stuxnet was wearing a disguise made from someone else's face. And then there was the rootkit, a component called Eldos Raw Disk, a commercial driver that Stuxnet used to bypass Windows security entirely and write directly to the raw file system. It could hide files, hide processes, hide its own existence. To the infected system, Stuxnet was invisible. The cost of developing these exploits? Security experts estimate each zero-day vulnerability is worth between $100,000 and $250,000 on the black market. Stuxnet was carrying $1 million worth of exploits. This wasn't some hacker in a basement. This was a nation-state with a blank check. Once Stuxnet confirmed it was inside module A26, it injected its payload into the Siemens S7315 PLCs, a block of malicious code known as Sequence C, and then it waited. It watched the centrifuges spin. It learned their patterns. It was patient. The IR-1 centrifuge is a marvel of engineering and a nightmare of physics. It's a hollow aluminum tube about 6 feet tall, spinning at 1,064 hertz. That's over 63,000 revolutions per minute. At those speeds, the rotor is under immense stress. The tolerances are measured in micrometers. Any deviation, any vibration, and the whole thing can tear itself apart. Stuxnet knew this because the engineers who built it had spent months studying these exact machines in Tennessee.
They knew the centrifuges' weaknesses better than the Iranians did. The attack came in two phases. Phase 1, overspeed. In the dead of night, when the facility was running on minimal staff, Stuxnet commanded the Vacon frequency drives to accelerate. 1064 Hz, 1200 Hz, 1410 Hz. The rotors screamed. The pressure inside the tubes spiked. The metal began to expand. Stuxnet held them there for exactly 15 minutes. Not long enough to cause immediate catastrophic failure, that would be too obvious. Just long enough to create invisible microfractures in the aluminum. Tiny cracks that would propagate over time. Then, phase 2, the crash stop. Stuxnet slammed the brakes. It commanded the drives to drop to 2 Hz, a near complete stop. The sudden deceleration was like slamming a car into a wall at highway speed. The rotors twisted. The bearings seized. The centrifuges ripped themselves apart from the inside. But here's the truly diabolical part. While this was happening, the scientists in the control room saw nothing. Stuxnet had recorded 21 seconds of normal sensor data, a boring, flat green line showing everything operating perfectly, and was playing it on an endless loop to their screens. They were watching a recording, a lie, while in the next room, their machines were committing suicide. The attack ran for months, quietly, invisibly. And by the time the Iranians realized something was wrong, it was too late.
When security researchers finally tore apart Stuxnet's code, they found something unexpected. The attackers had left signatures, calling cards, clues that were either arrogant taunts or deliberate misdirection. Clue number 1, the date. Buried deep in the code was a marker value, 1979-0509. May 9th, 1979. The day Habib El-Ghananian was executed in Tehran. El-Ghananian was a prominent Iranian Jewish businessman, one of the first victims of the revolutionary regime's firing squads. It was a message, a reminder. We remember. We're watching. Clue number 2, the hex code. In the logic block that controlled the attack sequence, researchers found a magic number used to trigger the sabotage, 0x deadfoot 007. In hacker speak, this reads as dead foot. Deadfoot is a pilot's term. It's what happens when an engine fails during takeoff. The rudder pedal goes slack, dead. The pilot loses control. The plane crashes. It was a perfect metaphor. The attackers were mocking their target. Your engine just failed, and you didn't even notice. But the most damning evidence came from the malware's behavior itself. The specificity, the precision. This wasn't a weapon designed to cause chaos. It was a surgical strike. It only activated on one specific configuration of hardware. It infected 100,000 computers worldwide, but it only attacked in one place, Natanz. By January 2010, IAEA inspectors arrived at Natanz for a routine check. They reviewed the logs. 11 cascades in module A26 were listed as disconnected. That's roughly 1,000 centrifuges. Physically destroyed. Gone. Iran never publicly acknowledged the attack. They couldn't. To admit they'd been hacked would be to admit weakness. So, they stayed silent. They cleared the debris, they installed new machines, and they kept enriching. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because if you look at the actual uranium production data from Natanz after the attack, something strange happened. Efficiency didn't go down, it went up. Political scientist John Lindsay analyzed the IAEA reports and found something nobody expected. Stuxnet destroyed the weakest centrifuges. The IR-1 was a notoriously unreliable machine. It was based on 1970s Pakistani designs. It broke down constantly, even without sabotage. By targeting these machines, Stuxnet accidentally acted as aggressive quality control. It forced the Iranians to replace the broken centrifuges with newer, better models. It forced them to tighten their operations, to improve their processes. By late 2010, Iran was producing more enriched uranium than before the attack. The sabotage had backfired. Not tactically, Stuxnet worked exactly as designed, but strategically, it may have accelerated the very program it was meant to destroy. And there's another consequence, a darker one. When Stuxnet escaped Natanz and spread to the internet, it became public. Security researchers reverse-engineered it. They published papers, they gave talks, they shared the code. Stuxnet became a blueprint, a proof of concept. It showed the world that you could weaponize software, that you could destroy physical infrastructure with code. And once that knowledge was out there, it couldn't be put back. Within years, we saw Dooku, Flame, Havocs, Black Energy, a whole generation of industrial malware, each one learning from Stuxnet's techniques. The weapon had been fired, but the war had just begun. Stuxnet proved something terrifying and profound. It proved that in the 21st century, you don't need missiles to destroy a nation's infrastructure. You just need code and patience and a USB drive. It proved that air gaps are an illusion, that isolation is a myth, that in a world where every machine has firmware, every system has vulnerabilities, nothing is truly safe. The US and Israel have never officially claimed responsibility, but the evidence is overwhelming. The sophistication, the resources, the intelligence required. This was a nation-state operation, a new kind of warfare. And here's the thing that keeps security experts up at night. Stuxnet was discovered by accident. A researcher in Belarus stumbled onto it because of a bug, a flaw in the worm's spreading mechanism that caused it to propagate too aggressively. If that bug hadn't existed, we might never have known. Which raises the question, how many other Stuxnets are out there right now, sitting quietly in power grids, in water treatment plants, in hospitals, in financial systems, waiting, watching, invisible? Stuxnet changed warfare forever. It proved you could hack the physical world, but it also proved something else, something the attackers probably didn't intend. You can destroy the hardware, you can sabotage the machines, but you cannot hack human determination. Iran didn't give up. They adapted. They learned. They got stronger. In the end, Stuxnet was a tactical masterpiece and a strategic failure. It destroyed 1,000 centrifuges and created 1,000 more questions. It won a battle and started a war that will never end. So the next time your computer updates or your power flickers for just a second, ask yourself, is that a bug or is that a weapon waiting for its moment to strike? Because in the age of Stuxnet, you'll never know until it's too late.